The fire crackled in front of us, spitting orange embers into the cool night air. The smell of burning pine mixed with the earthy dampness of the forest floor. We'd hiked for hours to find this spot, a small clearing surrounded by towering black pines whose trunks seemed to lean inward as though they were eavesdropping on our conversation. The only light came from the fire and the occasional silver flash of moonlight cutting through the branches. Somewhere far off, an owl called, 3 low notes, mournful and slow. It was the perfect night for ghost stories. "You ever hear about the Hollow?" I asked. My friends looked at me, shaking their heads. "It's not a place you'll find on any map, but some locals around here, they'll tell you it's real, and they'll tell you never to go looking for it. Because if you do, you won't come back the same." They chuckled nervously, but no one spoke. The forest was listening. Back in the late 1800s, when this land was little more than untamed wilderness, there was a small logging camp not far from here. Men came from miles away to work the timber, living in rough cabins, sleeping with their boots still on in case wolves came prowling in the night. One of the loggers was a man named Elias Finch, quiet, broad-shouldered, with eyes so pale they almost looked white in certain light. People said he'd been through things, though no one knew what. He worked harder than anyone, but there was something off about him. He'd stare into the trees for hours, like he was listening to something only he could hear. One autumn evening, a storm rolled in. Heavy clouds swallowed the sun, and the air turned sharp with the smell of rain. Elias told the other men he was going out to check the traps before the downpour hit. He never came back. They found his tracks the next morning, heading north into the deep woods, far beyond the trapping lines. The prints were wide and heavy at first, but after a while they began to look different. The stride grew longer, the impressions deeper, as if whatever was walking had become heavier. And then they just stopped. Not faded, not washed away, just gone. As though Elias had stepped off the earth. The men searched for 3 days, calling his name, marking the trees so they wouldn't get lost themselves. But the deeper they went, the stranger the forest became. The trees here grew closer together, their roots twisting out of the ground like gnarled hands. The air felt thick, almost syrupy, and no birds sang. They swore the sun barely reached the forest floor, even at midday. One man claimed he saw something between the trees, a shadow, taller than any man, standing perfectly still. When he blinked, it was gone. By the end of the 3rd day, they gave up the search. The forest had swallowed Elias Finch, and that was that. But then, 3 weeks later, Elias came back. He walked into camp at dawn, clothes torn, skin scratched and dirty. His eyes, those pale, unsettling eyes, were somehow different, wider, unblinking. No one knew what happened. He wouldn't speak of it. But after that night, things began to happen in the camp. Tools would go missing, only to be found days later high up in the branches of pine trees. Animals would vanish from the traps, leaving only the metal springs twisted and bent out of shape. And Elias, he'd disappear for hours, always returning from the north. Sometimes in the dead of night, men would wake to find him standing at the edge of their bunks, just staring at them. Winter came early that year. Snow fell heavy, trapping the men in their cabins for days at a time. One morning, a supply team came up from the nearest town, but the camp was gone, not destroyed, not abandoned, just gone. The cabin stood empty, beds still made, tools laid neatly on workbenches, but not a single man was there. No signs of a struggle, no tracks in the snow, nothing but the whisper of wind through the pines. For decades, the land was left alone. The forest grew thicker, swallowing the old paths, but every now and then, hikers would go missing in these woods. Last summer, a man named Darren, a wildlife photographer, set up camp not far from here. His last text to his sister read, Found a strange clearing in the North Woods. Feels wrong. When search teams went looking, they found his camp intact. Food still on the stove, camera on the tripod. But every photo on the memory card was of the same thing. A perfectly round clearing. The trees leaning away from it. The ground in the center bare and black. As if something had burned there centuries ago. In the very last photo, a figure stood at the far edge of the clearing. It was tall, thin, and its eyes shone pale white. Locals call it the Hollow. They say it's a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Step inside and something ancient will notice you. It will follow you back. Some say Elias Finch never truly returned, that what walked into camp was just wearing his skin. The fire popped, making us all jump. A cold breeze whispered through the trees, and I realized the night had gone completely silent. No wind, no insects, no owl calls. Somewhere in the blackness between the pines, I thought I saw movement. I forced a laugh and poked the fire again. Anyway, I said, the Hollow's probably just an old story. But then, from deep in the woods, 3 low, mournful notes sounded. An owl call. The same one from the story. And that's when I noticed it. Every single pine around us was leaning away from the clearing.